Hi all, welcome to the Keptn community meeting. Today is November 18th, and we have a lot of people on the call. So, yesterday, quick. Okay, so on Tuesday we had a user group meeting where we had a presentation of multi-stage delivery, Keptn, and with other tools. So take a look at it. And today we will go through the agenda we have for the meeting. Page. So before we start, does anyone have additional topics for the agenda? So here we are. And yeah, let's just go from the beginning. So regarding noteworthy issues and contributions, do we have any?
No, I don't think so.
Well, there is a lot of various things regarding content, but yeah, good contributions. So don't remember one. Okay, so and yeah, for Slack webhook integration, Johannes, would you like to comment?
Yeah, I think a couple meetings ago we talked about that, and now magically it happened that Andy Grabner filed a PR against the Artifact Hub, and there he explains how to use Slack webhook to create a webhook integration. It's written down in the README. Then he also added the meta information for making it then publicly accessible via Artifact Hub. And I then took his PR and did just a couple of rearrangements and modified it in a couple of ways to have a kind of template which can then be used also to describe other integrations based on webhooks. But I think this is already a good start for for promoting and also publishing how to get integrated with this new capability that we shipped with 0.10. And I'm just asking now, Oleg, can you give me a review on this PR?
Yeah, I believe that I reviewed a previous pull request from India. I mean, with the same content, but it was in another repository, I believe.
No, it's in the same repository. I just forked his his branch and did some tweaks and changes.
Okay.
I see.
Yeah, I will try to review it tomorrow in the morning.
All right. Cool. Thanks. And when those this one is merged, then we should actually also remove the documentation on the website, because this would be a duplicate and a redundant and not needed anymore.
Okay. Yeah. Does it make sense to just create a follow-up issue? How do you usually handle these follow-ups?
Absolutely. I just added a comment here on this PR, but having a follow-up issue on the documentation would be even better.
So it's Keptn.io.
But I can take care of that after the meeting.
Thank you. So I'm just learning, so asking what's the common practice for such cases. Okay, thank you. So, and yeah, thanks to Andy for this integration, because it's webhook support is quite generic and it allows to do a lot more to what the executor service was supporting. So now Keptn becomes even more generic. Okay, anything else on Slack webhooks?
Nope, that's everything.
Okay, thank you. And Florian?
All right. Yeah, if it's okay, I can take over the screen sharing. Then
yeah, if it's more convenient for you, just go ahead.
Because then I can show some of the changes I made. All right. So first issue I worked on was about the approval service. So here we had the following case. So when we had an approval task and an approval, the triggered event was sent, and there was no result from a previous task available, meaning, for example, when the approval was the first task within a sequence, within a certain stage, there we had the bug that the approval service didn't react with sending a started event, even though the approval strategy might have been set to manual, both for pass and warning. But since we didn't have neither of those, so neither pass or warning in the result, it didn't send anything, and eventually the sequence would time out. So that has been fixed in this pull request now. So the way it works is the approval service now checks whether there is a result from a previous task available. And if yes, then it will continue to apply the previous logic where it inspects the specified approval strategies. But in case where there is no result available, it will fall back to a manual approval strategy and therefore react with a .started event. And then afterwards, it's the responsibility of the user to send the approval .finished event either via the bridge or via the CLI. So to see this in action, let's have a look at my bridge here. So in that sequence, we have exactly that case that I've just described. So I have a sequence consisting of one task, so the approval. And here we have the, that's the wrong event. Here we have the approval that triggered event. And as you can see, the result is empty here. And what happened then was that the approval service responded with the started event, also with a message telling that, okay, there was no result and now I'm falling back to a manual approval strategy. And then afterwards, I sent the approval finished event using the CLI, as you can see here in the source of the event. Yeah, so that was that. Are there any questions about that?
What is the behavior of the shipper controller if there is no result available?
There is no result available. This will actually only be the case for the first task within a sequence. So for all other tasks, it will.
And if an external integration forgets to set the result, assuming, what's here the behavior?
Here it will, I think it will just forward what it got from the last task. So in that case, the subsequent triggered event will also have no result property set, but I'm not 100% sure. So that would need to be investigated.
Thank you. No need to investigate it now, but I was just curious how this matches. Thank you.
All right. Okay, the next one, MongoDB data store. This was a refactoring task. So I'm not going to go through the complete code, but what I wanted to highlight here is that we restructured the code in a way that, of course, it's now easier to unit test. And also with using the me-mongo library, which is in-memory MongoDB that is spun up during the unit tests, it was a matter of, I don't know, half an hour to get the coverage then up from, I think previously it was 22% for that service. And using this library, it was, I was able to increase it to about 72%, which is quite nice. And yeah, also now the code complexity has been reduced. So all in all, this service should now be easier to both understand and maintain, and of course, unit test. Right. Any questions about that? All right, if not, third and last from my side, this was about the webhook service. So here we had the case that, so basically the webhook service has the possibility to both take over the execution of tasks. So let's have a look at this gist here that I prepared. So for example, you can listen to my task.triggered events, meaning that it, in that case, should take over the execution of the my task. So that means that when it receives that, it will first of all react with a started event to indicate that it has taken over this task. And then depending on the send finish property, it will either, if it's set to false, then the called webhook will have the responsibility of sending the finished event, or in that case, I've sent it true, meaning that after those requests have been executed successfully, the webhook service will react with a finished event. So that's the first way of operating the service. And the second one is, for example, to just listen for any other kinds of events, like a finished event, which I've done here. So in that case, it should not respond with any sort of event that might interfere with the execution of the sequence, because in that case, it should strictly act as a listener. And here we had the case that when it listened to my task.finished event, for example, and the executed webhook was failing because, for example, it called some unknown API, then in fact it did send a finished event with the status set to error. And that was, of course, not the intended behavior of that service, but that has been fixed now. So now it will strictly only react to any kinds of event when it receives a .triggered event. And we can see that here in action in my bridge. So here I have triggered my sequence, which consists of my task, so the one that I just showed you. And here, first of all, the webhook service executed the webhooks defined for the task.triggered event. So it reacted with my task that started and with the finished event. But in the background then, of course, it was also subscribed to the finished event. And here, as I've showed you earlier, it was configured with a web request that was supposed to fail. And as you can see here, it didn't mess around with the sequence in that case by sending any finished event. So that's now the behavior as it was intended. Right. Are there any questions about that?
But still an error is thrown due to the failed web request.
That should be the case. Yeah, in that case, it should respond with the error event. So, but this one won't have any impact on the further execution of the task sequence. All right. If there are no further questions, I think I'm done with my issues. So handing over to Moritz.
Yes, thank you. I will also share. Okay. So for me, I had a few bugs and minor issues to solve, and then one big PR at the end. So the first one was a regression, actually. Somehow in one of my last PRs, I forgot to re-enable the UI test screenshots from Cypress. And now with a small pipeline step, they are now uploaded again to all the pipeline runs. And this one does the latest master run, for example. Now you have the screenshots here again. So those should be back now. That's the first thing. Then I removed the Docker caching for now from the pipeline. It caused more trouble than it did good. So I removed it for now. It didn't even really decrease the pipeline timings. And it actually caused lots of errors in the pipeline that were confusing to the team. As you can see here, that's basically all errors from the Docker cache, which don't actually error out the pipeline, but still they are thrown and the cache doesn't really work as intended. So for now, I removed that.
Now we are even a little bit faster. That's a funny thing.
Yeah, sad but true. Yeah, so for now I removed that. I have some plans to re-enable it in a different way, not to cache from one pipeline run to the next one, but actually to cache from the unit tests where Docker images are already built to the Docker builds that actually build the final images in the end. So that should at least work better and maybe also faster, hopefully. Then another small fix I did are build everything builds. So on a PR, if you put the build everything label, basically the pipeline will go ahead and build all the images and the CLI and the Keptn installer Helm chart. If you put that label. But to reduce pipeline times, I switched that to only build images where changes in the PR actually happened. But that resulted in problems where when you rebase on the current master, for example, your PR is outdated, you rebase on latest master, and you would actually have changes from master that you want to build, but then in the end, it doesn't really build them. So now the build everything builds just basically unconditionally build all the images every time. For that, I kind of switched around the if statements, the conditionals in front of some of the build steps. Yeah, and then the last PR, I did already mention it before in some review, but now it's finally merged. We are now using the Bitnami MongoDB chart instead of our own custom one. And with that, we are also upgrading from Mongo 3.6 to Mongo 4.4. And basically, this should, for one, our installer code is reduced drastically since we don't have a special custom chart anymore for our MongoDB. And also we get basically best practices from Bitnami, from their chart. The only thing that you need to be careful with is this will require manual migration steps with the upgrade to the next version, so to 0.11, when this PR is also included in the release. So this will mean that you need to back up your MongoDB, upgrade Keptn, and then restore from the MongoDB dump so that everything should work as expected. Yeah, and that's already it from me. Any questions?
Maybe a clarification note that we will make the instruction how to upgrade your next Keptn installation with all the instructions step by step, how to restore your, or to back up your Mongo, how to then upgrade, and then how to restore back your data. So you will not lose any information.
Exactly. Yeah, so those upgrade instructions, actually wrote them already in the Keptn docs. The PR is almost ready for that, and it will also be in the release notes, as far as I remember.
Exactly.
Right? Yep. So it's at least hard to overlook them. Cool. That's it from me. Thanks. Handing over to Bernd.
Thank you. Okay, now should work. Okay, for me, first of all, there was also cleanup / refactoring issue in the sprint where we just took a look at the JMeter service, doing some kind of cleanup there to reduce the cognitive complexity of the current code base. I think it doesn't make a lot of sense to look into the actual code changes. There are quite a bunch of them. What I did is just, so I did not, or at least tried to not change behavior of the JMeter service, but just cleaning up, putting things in separate components and so on. This is also reflected in Sonar Cloud, where we now can see they're pretty much everything at 0. Some minor things, some minor code smells are still there, but they are not. If we take a look at what they are actually are, this for example is just saying, okay, define a constant instead of duplicating that string. Maybe we should also do that as well. But a whole bunch of warnings about cognitive complexity, aka your method is too long, your function is too complicated, they are now gone, and the code is much easier to follow actually. It took me a little bit longer than expected due to build errors and so on. Initially, I just also wanted to increase the test coverage because this is also a service which has quite poor coverage. However, I was not able to tackle this one. I created a follow-up issue, which we should do in the next cleanup / refactoring task, where we just also create more unit tests for the JMeter service. So I created this issue for that. Don't know when we should tackle it. So that's it. The next story, where am I? Whoops. Also JMeter service, just a minor thing, the JMeter binary version, which the JMeter service is internally using, was outdated. I think it was at version 5.1 or something like that. I just bumped up the version to version 5.4.1. Didn't expect that any breaking changes, but to be safe, I executed integration tests again, and they are still working, which indicates that nothing was broken. The next thing was also a cleanup / refactoring ticket about the shipyard controller. Basically, do I have it opened here? Yeah. Basically, what's noteworthy here, besides the changes which you usually do in refactoring tasks, like extracting things, putting them in separate components, etc. We also identified that a lot of our unit tests, which are testing the shipyard controller components, so the central part of this module, are actually almost quite like a component test. So we have quite long unit tests here, which are actually testing the whole shipyard component. So I put those tests, which are quite nice, although they are no unit test in that sense, but rather component tests, and we should treat them like component tests, separated from unit tests. I put them in a separate file called shipyard controller component tests. We have quite a lot of them, and did small refactorings there. Namely, also I've used now the a real in-memory MongoDB instead of complicated mocks. Which cleaned up things also quite a bit in the test code itself. And now we have these kind of tests separated from the other unit tests we have for the shipyard controller core component. Also, setting up MongoDB a little bit differently than in the database tests, because in the database tests, I think it's done with test main, which means everything in this package will spawn up in memory MongoDB. In case we only want to have it for this specific test, I've created this little method here where I just say, okay, please set up MongoDB, and this will give back a cleanup function, which we also call at the end of the function. So that's quite nice if you just want to have MongoDB in memory, just put this line and you have the MongoDB set up and also the cleanup of the MongoDB after your tests failed or succeeded.
One question to that. Are the tests still executed together with the unit tests? Or not? Or integration tests? Or
they are still executed, yes.
Okay, with the unit test.
With the unit test, yes.
Oh yeah, okay. Cool.
So
Thanks.
from a technical perspective, it's still Go unit test.
Okay.
But as you see, they are really designed like component tests. We are doing step 1 this, then we are feeding it with that and that event, step 3, step 4, blah, 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 blah. And in the end, we are evaluating what the component did and if everything is right. And all tests are designed like that.
Okay.
In the refactoring process, these tests were really, really good. Without them, I would have had no idea if I broke something or not. So really, they are good, really good that we have them. We can really be sure that at least the core things which the shipyard controller should do still works. That can be verified by these tests pretty well. Okay, next thing is already my last thing here, which dealt with the distributor, where I just did sanitize the logging. There were a couple of lines which had dirty log messages or even wrong error levels, things which should be at info level were outputted as error and so on. I cleaned up this and took also the opportunity to clean up the HTTP server shutdown so that it is really gracefully shut down in the end. And this recently got merged. And that's it for me. Is there no question? I will just hand over to Armin.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm going to present 2 pull requests for the Keptn's bridge. The first one which I would like to present is adding a checkbox to set the send finish flag for the webhook configuration, as we have seen from Florian's presentation, that the webhook service is sending a started and a finished event. And yeah, the idea here is that in case that you have a webhook that might trigger a long-running task, for example, you can set the send finished flag to false, and in that case, not the webhook service will send the finished event, but yeah, the webhook itself needs to send it, and in this case, handle the finished state of the webhook. Yeah, a short demonstration here. Yeah, in the uniform screen, when we have a webhook configuration, a webhook service, and you add a subscription now, you can configure the send finished event. As Florian already described, only for triggered events, we do send the started and the finished event. So once a triggered event is selected, you can configure either to automatically have the finished event sent or by webhook receiver. Yeah, so selecting by webhook receiver will, as here in this info box described, move the responsibility of sending the finished event to the webhook receiver, which is good, especially for long-running tasks. Are there any questions regarding this?
If you select started or finished, sorry, will it be grayed out or will it disappear?
Yeah, if started or finished is selected, then it is grayed out, and obviously no option is selected because we are not sending any events there.
I would also change the font color maybe to gray.
Yeah, we can also gray out the font. This is actually
But-
already merged, and we use here a library for all these form controls. But we can
if it's
adjust
the
this.
default, yeah.
We can adjust this, of course. We can add the enhancement issue there. Maybe it would be better to have also the text grayed out. Yes.
Johannes, you were about to say something.
No, no, don't have it or don't need anymore.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and the second pull request I wanted to show is adding a 404 page to the Keptn's bridge. So let's have a look. What was the problem? For example, when searching a URL in Keptn's bridge, which was not existing, you saw a blank page and you were not sure is the bridge broken or what to do. And now when you access a page that's not existing, you see a message page not found with a button go to dashboard. And of course, we can there also have a short demonstration. For example, if I open any page which is not existing, it will say this page not found. So the requested URL does not exist. Go to dashboard. And with the click, go to dashboard, of course, you are redirected to the dashboard here. Yeah, that's actually all from my side. So if there are no further questions, I'm handing over to Andre.
Thanks. So hopefully you're receiving. So the first thing I want to mention is we had a problem with missing a task in the error log event. This was the issue. Actually, we had missed the task in the error log. The problem was caused by an invalid event type, which was received by the webhook service. This was actually fixed. And in the results, you can see that currently in the error log messages, we have the tasks with the link to the deployment or whatever task you are working with. So the fix was rather easy or not so complicated. Actually, it was binded with the invalid message types, which were mentioned already by Florian. So I'm not going to go through the code, but it's rather simple and contains a lot of refactoring. The second task was fixing issues which were found by static analyzers on a type lift. These issues were mostly just about checking the error return values and getting rid of the that code. Nothing very complicated. And the first task was actually a problem in configuration service, where when actually adding invalid resource to the configuration or to some project or service has caused an error, and actually this invalid resource has been in the Git repository where it shouldn't be. So after there was actually a change order of extracting and added resources to repository. At the beginning, the resources were added to the Git repository, and then they were checked and extracted. And actually, this should be the opposite order. So it was rather a minor fix. Yeah. If there are no questions, that's all from me.
Okay, I think there are no further points in the agenda. So I think we can conclude the meeting here. One minor note maybe on my side, we are preparing the release of Keptn 0.11. So stay tuned and hopefully we will see the new version next week. Something else to add, Johannes?
No, not from my side. Any other questions from the participants? Nope, looks like it's not the case. All right, yeah, then thanks for joining this meeting and see you next time. I see you next time, next week at the same time. All right, have a nice one.
Bye.
Bye.
See you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.